Episode
What-
1, man.
Episode 1, a cool intro didn't just happen, but maybe
Right.
in the future we can talk about doing something. Well, this is going to be new for me and new for you, of course. I've only ever hosted a podcast like alone, so
Yep.
I've
never hosted a podcast ever, so
yeah. So don't mind me if I step on your toes and I forget that I have a co-host here. But
well,
while we're in introductions, Jordan, I suppose we should let the people know who you are, and then I'll do a brief introduction for myself. But
yeah, I go back and forth on what I call myself, basically. But basically a freelance content creator. I do everything from photo to video, video editing, shoot the video. I do a little bit of, digital marketing in the sense of running ads, posting for companies, etc. But only been doing it for about a year and been learning a lot. I love it. Went to college, got a finance degree,
which I think is the best part of the story is that, you shouldn't even be here. And for those of you who are interested, you did a great episode with the Back Pocket. And that's how you even popped on my radar as somebody who's in the creative space. And I'm glad to know those guys and to have had you pop on my radar. But a more in-depth story for you that people should go listen to if they're interested. But the Cliff Notes is, as I'm sure you're going to go into.
And that was actually, that podcast was right when I made the switch almost. And
it's awesome.
Honestly, I haven't looked back since. It's been great. But yeah, basically just freelance content creator, do a little bit of everything, trying to, dip my toe in everything that I can at this point, figure out, I don't really need to niche down right now. So it's kind of just doing as much as I can and figuring stuff out. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Basically me, man.
And for the people, Jordan and I are kind of going off an outline. We're going to keep this as casual as possible. And we'll certainly get into more of our experiences as we go along, but we don't want to, I don't know. I don't think anybody's listening for a diatribe of who we are for a half an hour. So that'll just kind of happen organically. But for me, I'm Tyler Webb, also up here in Minneapolis. I don't know if Jordan had mentioned that, but I am a student at the University of Minnesota. We'll be graduating in the fall. And I'm sort of in the podcast description, I labeled myself as social media guy because there isn't any other, there isn't a quippy term like videographer or anything that I could put. But a lot of my experience is in that arena of social media and organic social and content curation and creation and stuff like that. I'm sort of a jack of all trades, master of none when it comes to the content game, but I'm super interested in video and in podcasts like this. So I try to flex those muscles whenever I can. And this was a great opportunity for me to do that. After meeting Jordan, we had a couple business ideas that we were going to hash out this summer, which unfortunately probably aren't going to come to fruition given the current situation. They're on a pause, unfortunately, but we wanted to still be able to work together and do something creative together and sort of grow as professionals together. And we thought, what better than to start a podcast like every other white 20-somethings in the world.
Exactly.
So
you couldn't have said that better. Honestly, just this is an opportunity for us to not only share, the little, I wouldn't say little experience, but, share as we go, our mistakes, our successes, trying to help people, but at the same time, challenging us, giving us the opportunity to produce more content, because ultimately that's what this podcast is about.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. And I think there's a unique balance there with the two of us where we do have a bit of expertise in certain areas. And like I said, we'll sort of get into each of our skill sets because I really do think we have quite a bit to offer in that arena. But then we're not going to sit up here on pedestals and say that we're experts and have it all figured out. And I think there's a fun part of that, which is you can kind of hop along for the ride with us and kind of see how we're growing as we go about it together, sort of as newly founded business partners, which is a fun aspect of that as well. So I sort of want to hop into first, the name of the podcast and why it's called Swipe Up and sort of the funny little tagline we put behind it. And then we can certainly hop into the rest that we have planned. But Jordan, if you could try to give sort of a description of what Swipe Up is as a show and what we're sort of trying to accomplish on a really high level, if you could give an elevator pitch, and we'll probably have to refine this as we go along. I know the Back Pocket guys have only this year really figured out a way to nail down in 30 seconds what their podcast is. So this will be an ongoing process, but as we see it right now, what is it?
I think the description nails it, man. It's a podcast about getting more likes. And honestly, I think when some people either hear or read that, they'll be like, oh, these guys are just, trying to get people to be influencers and just get as many likes as possible on whatever. But that's not, it's not all it's about.
Yeah.
We'll dive into, creating the content, and posting it, and ultimately utilizing what I think you're really good at is, the hashtags, the algorithms, figuring out what kind of posts work, which ones don't, and ultimately getting more likes. That's what it's about, man.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that tagline that we kind of came up with of getting more likes, because you're right, on the surface, it's totally like a total like superficial, like just really like you should buy bots or like just something really artificial. But like when you dig into it a little more, and hopefully as people kind of learn what we're about, I saw you drinking a bubbly. I'm also drinking a bubbly.
Hey, not sponsored.
Not sponsored. Yeah. Well, that'd be great. But we want to sort of dig into the whole idea of like swipe up being a sort of like, it's kind of now become a joke of itself of like, that is the form of engagement on social media. Like everybody's working for 10,000 followers on Instagram so they can get the swipe up feature. But like when you think about it, it's like the swipe up feature is so overwrought, and so it's such a parody of itself right now that's actually not the best form of engaging your audiences. And that's kind of the whole point, which there are a bunch of different levels to engaging audiences, and we sort of hope to get into every single one of those things. And Jordan sort of alluded to it. I do have a bit of experience with and a bit of knowledge in sort of the algorithm side of things. And I really hope that we can provide some like practical takeaways. And that's like what I'm trying to do on my LinkedIn. Like, not like there's just a bunch of people that kind of spew high level BS type stuff. That's like, ooh, like, how, this is my morning routine, or this is why meditation, like all that stuff is fine and it's great. And I think there's a place for it. But I think Jordan and I'd be the first to admit that we don't have that part of our lives figured out. And the part that we do have figured out is Jordan's really good at putting together videos, and I guess I'm really good at curating hashtags. And if that's the value that we can provide, I think that's the value that we're looking to provide. But aside from that sort of high level stuff, we want to get into some of the social media management, analytic aspect of it. We both have a lot of experience in content curation. Jordan alluded to the algorithms, just different, tips and tricks around those things. Like I said, we want a lot of these takeaways to be practical and stuff that you can go and actually do. And then we're getting to some high level stuff, like content that like different content forms that work, that stand out better. We might even get into some different levels of social media being organic or paid and different stuff like that. But it's going to be an evolution as we grow as professionals and as people. And we just kind of hope to document it and take you along for the ride and kind of share our learnings from it. And maybe you take something away, maybe it's just entertaining to you. But at the end, we'll be on here hopefully every week and sharing something. So that's kind of the goal here.
And Ty, just to go back quick to you mentioned your LinkedIn videos. And I just got to say, if anyone watches this and hasn't seen any of your LinkedIn videos, they got to go watch them, because 7 to 10 minutes long, and I learn something new every single time I watch them. I think they're awesome.
I appreciate that.
Even not just the videos too. It's like the detailed posts where you get into a specific video you posted on 5-star or something like that. But I have learned like a tremendous amount just from those LinkedIn posts. So that's awesome.
Well, I appreciate that. And that's a very similar tone I want to take here. And I know that you have a lot of those same takeaways in like a totally different area of social media and content that I think is going to be fun to meld those two worlds together. But you sort of will get a tone in those videos. And I know Jordan has done a couple posts himself, as we sit here and just pat ourselves on the back, that I think is just, if you don't want to commit yourself to a whole podcast, go watch one of our posts or look at one of our videos and kind of see the tone that we take. And hopefully you can kind of get the sense of practicality and that there are real takeaways. I'm actually working on one right now. I have my notebook open in front of me where I'm going to sort of you talked about the 7 to 10 minutes. I'm actually going to be trying to force myself to maybe make the videos a little bit shorter. I made a joke in the last video. It's actually always a sort of a fun way to see who's actually watching towards the end. I always make some joke at the end of the video. I'm like, nobody's watching. And on my last one, somebody commented, they're like, oh, I was watching towards the end. Like, don't worry. I'm like, okay, that's good to know that one person is. But I love that. I'm sort of looking at what some average like watch times are and what average video lengths are in different social media platforms, and sort of seeing where LinkedIn, which is a pretty immature and young platform, especially in terms of video right now, sort of fits in between like YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all that sort of stuff, and trying to derive, my main takeaway from the video will be trying to derive like an ideal video length for LinkedIn. And that's going to sort of be the goal.
Exactly.
And so different stuff like that is like stuff that I'm super nerdy about and geeky about and passionate about. And I always just want to find ways to put more of that like out into the zeitgeist of social media. And I know that you're sort of the same way, but if you don't get a sense for it right now, we're both kind of geeky about this kind of stuff, and we can hope that there's takeaways for you as you watch and listen.
While we're talking about it, can we touch on, I guess, how the dynamic of LinkedIn sort of, in my opinion, it switched from, what's acceptable to post for content. And I know Gary V, I listen to him a lot, and he's talked about it in the past that, LinkedIn's the new Facebook. You're able to post, every day about your daily life, and it doesn't have to be all business. I mean, when did you feel like, I guess, you saw the dynamic switch? When did you feel like, okay, now I'm going to put content out that I actually want to? Was there like a specific time where you were able to see that switch?
Yeah. I mean, I've only been posting. So I try to get something out 3 times a week, and whether something out means like a video or just like a kind of a longer text post, or like even something like this, when I posted a link to this podcast, like this is me creating and this is me doing something in that arena. I try to do it 3 times a week, but I've only been doing that probably for like a little over 2 months now. So it hasn't been very long. And honestly, I was extremely late to the game in the sense of like people were already creating video on LinkedIn. Like I can remember really first getting into it as early as like last March and last April. So in 2019. And that's when I sort of started identifying it. And even when I first identified it, I'm like, wow, these guys have been doing it since like the previous summer of 2018. So there's been some really pioneering creators on the platform for a while. A guy by the name of Quinton Allums, who is out of Milwaukee. He runs a company called Urban Misfit Ventures, and they do video and they do different stuff like that. And his whole team has sort of been like a pioneering force on LinkedIn, which has been super cool to see. They really kind of brought video to the platform in a way that was like cool and not just corporate video or like phone video. Like they put production effort behind video on LinkedIn, which was the first time that I've ever seen that happen. And then since then, they've spurned a really cool community, actually widely based out of like Milwaukee, Wisconsin, funny enough, which you wouldn't think is sort of the creative video hub of LinkedIn, but it quite honestly really is. And like no little part to Quinton and the rest of his team. But, ever since into last summer, I was kind of seeing these people talk about just the raw organic reach that LinkedIn has. And I've talked about a little bit in some of my past videos, but the platform it's not new. Like in the sense, it's actually been around for quite a long time. I don't know exactly when it was founded, but I'm often shocked to know that like it's far older than Instagram. It's almost as old as Facebook. Like when Mark Zuckerberg was hiring his first employees at Facebook, he was using LinkedIn. And, obviously back then and obviously back then it wasn't what it is now, but it's not a young platform, but it is a young platform in terms of like content. Like it's never really been a place for people to actively post and actively engage and actively build communities, and certainly not a place for people to have video production, being posted. But as that's taken shape, the platform certainly wants more people to do that. So they kind of boost the numbers in terms of people they're showing it to, and sort of as people that are sort of in the space that I am know that Instagram, it almost seems like Instagram's working against you to show your videos to new audiences. LinkedIn is actively wanting to show your stuff to more people. So it's certainly an interesting platform. And I think it speaks a lot to like what we're trying to do here, like just trying to build out niches in terms of young professionals. I think there are a lot of people building really cool communities and grossing really insane amounts of reach and trying to build out sort of their specialties in different areas. And I think we're probably going to be using that platform a lot to hopefully grow this show. But I think it's a really exciting platform. And I love that being sort of our first subject and takeaway, because I know it's a platform we're really bullish on. And I think it's something that a lot of people should be looking at as well.
Right. 100%. And I would say too, I think up until honestly, probably around the same time, like 2-3 months ago, I always saw LinkedIn as a prospecting tool for business and like a glorified job posting place.
Yep.
Where you can, you just post your resume or you post your experience. And I had never viewed it as anything else. And 2 or 3 months ago, I started, just posting stuff that I wanted to do. And my LinkedIn's doing great. I posted a Star Wars video for Star Wars Day. It's gotten like 7,000 views.
Oh, that's incredible.
What do you, I mean, that's by far the best thing I've done on LinkedIn, and it was just it was basically a joke.
I think that's the cool part about LinkedIn too, is that wasn't even something that was meant to drive new business or anything like that. It was just a very funny show your personality type thing, and that's being really highly receptive. It has really great reception on the platform. So I love that.
100%. Let's segue now that you mentioned, posting about, it was my personality. That's who I am. I love golf. I love Star Wars.
Yeah.
I love making, random videos.
Yep.
Let's talk about the dynamic between, posting strictly business versus posting personal. What do you feel is a good, balance between that? Gary Vee talks about posting anything and everything. Like, do you see that as okay? Too much, too little?
That's a really good question. I think I often err on the side of posting too little. So I don't think I would ever go as far as, posting like a personal life update on LinkedIn or using it the same way. Like I'm very active on Instagram and I'll post pictures of my friends there, but I try to draw that line between LinkedIn and other platforms that are a little bit more personal based. Not that your personal information doesn't have a place on LinkedIn, because as you kind of shown, it can do really well. And that authenticity, I think, does really well. But the way that I try to do it is just sprinkle in different bits of humor, different bits of my personality in the videos and in the posts that I do. I certainly don't try to take myself too seriously. I think that's a problem a lot of people fall into on LinkedIn, is they try to take themselves too seriously and then things don't work out. And then it's like they're embarrassed for themselves and other people are embarrassed for them. And it's like this whole thing. And I think if you just always take the stance of not taking yourself too seriously on the platform and kind of sprinkling in, I'll throw in just little jokes and I'll be laughing at myself as I'm shooting videos or as I'm typing things out. In my last post about trending, I said, if I'm not trending, I'm quitting LinkedIn. Or I had, at one point I had 469 followers on LinkedIn, and I just posted a screenshot in one of my comments and I said, I'm retiring from LinkedIn. And that's just kind of my dumb sense of humor that kind of perforates through the content that I post, but I never actually take an explicit post to talk about my humor or my personal things, if that makes sense.
Totally. 100%. Can you still hear me? My mic says it keeps disconnecting.
Yeah, you're now sounding like you're coming from your AirPods.
Okay, great.
It wouldn't be a first episode if we didn't have technical difficulties.
Right.
That's interesting. Are you just going in the cam mic section, underneath?
Yep, I'm there now.
I did have weird connectivity issues with my microphone yesterday. I was trying to record something and it just wouldn't turn on, but then I kind of, jiggled it around for a little bit and that did turn on. So.
Okay. While I'm messing with this, do you want to talk about 5-star a little bit?
I'd love to talk about 5-star. I could talk all day about 5-star, so you have plenty of time.
Yeah.
So I suppose to sort of hop into what our expertise is, you're listening, you're like, why should I even pay attention to these guys or care what these guys have to say? Jordan has a great body of work. And I think for somebody in his profession, it's a lot easier to look and say oh, that's a really good video. This guy clearly has a lot of competencies. For somebody like me, who kind of deals more in social media management and brand building, maybe there's a similar level of looking at a social media platform and be like, oh, that has a lot of followers and a lot of success, or a brand and saying, oh, I like that brand and appreciate what they do. There's a little bit more or a little bit less proof in the pudding in terms of who has credibility in certain aspects. So an account that I like to use to show that I have a bit of credibility in social media management and building brands and creating content and building audiences is an account on Instagram called 5-Star Football. Basically, the short version of the story is, in high school, I was approached by a mutual friend who was running a Twitter account that basically did the same thing, which was curated football content. And he was like, hey, do you want to help? And I said, yes, I want to help. I have no skills, but I'd love to help. And at the end of high school, we had 140,000 followers. And I was just obsessed with doing that sort of thing and building these theme pages. And then last summer, I decided to take it up again, this time on my own. And I picked up an account called 5-Star Football with 20,000 followers. And now sitting here, we have 91,000 followers. And so it's just a fun side project that I do. And I use to test different aspects of the algorithm and different content formats and stuff like that. And something that I just have as a fun little side project, but I think is a bit of a testament to at least my skills in the area of social media management. And it's something that, like I said, I love to use as sort of a proof to show how different strategies could work across different platforms. And if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see that that I'd love to talk about it. But it is sort of a fun thing that I'm sure we'll be talking about here, Jordan, on this podcast. It is something that I do intend to keep running so that I can sort of keep trying different things and keep seeing how different strategies work that, you know, I can utilize in my own life, and that people listening can utilize when they're doing their different things. So did you get your mic problems figured out, Jordan? It looks like Jordan might not have gotten his mic problems figured out. Well, as he's working to figure them out, I suppose we can kind of round off this, like, what is this podcast trying to be, or even maybe the benefit of a podcast for people like us. And I think there is sort of a joke that everybody who is like a white 20-something has a podcast. And I think there are maybe varying levels of like relevance to different people. I think some people often think, and hopefully we don't come across this way, that like, just because they're funny with their friends and that they have a good time talking to their friends means that other people would care to listen, which isn't always the case. And I'm sure like Jordan has some experience listening to podcasts where they're like, oh, I don't think you needed a podcast. But if you are thinking that about Jordan and I don't know, we hope to we hope to use this podcast as sort of like just a marketing tool for ourselves as professionals. I think it's often good. The same reason that we use LinkedIn video or LinkedIn as a platform to create content, even though it's not getting hundreds of views or, you know, thousands of likes or anything like that, it is a great way for people to see what we're passionate about and sort of the body of our work and different things like that. Jordan, if you can hear me, I don't know if he can't hear me. He's shaking his head no. Maybe he can't hear me and that's why he was shaking his head. Interesting. In any case, Jordan and I sort of hope to use this podcast as just sort of a billboard of what our work is and what we're passionate about. And I think there's a lot to be said about people using it the same way. I think it goes right back in line with you taking yourself too seriously on LinkedIn or when you're creating content, or thinking that you have a soapbox deserved of being able to stand on and have other people listen to you. I think if you take podcasting or content creation that way, you're going to be left very upset and probably very disappointed. And I don't think a lot of people are going to be very receptive to what you have to say. But if you take it in a way that hopefully Jordan and I will take it, in which it's sort of a billboard of the work that you do and just a representation of the things that you're passionate about, that hopefully you can either get something out of it for yourself, whether that just be personal gratification or a way to scratch a creative itch, or maybe you can even sort of prospect new business or something like that. But Jordan, can you hear me now?
Ty, I'm sure you can hear me, but I literally can't hear you anymore. And I can't figure it out.
I can hear Jordan. That's so cool. But he can't hear me. And it sounds like he's maybe even coming through the microphone. I wish I could help Jordan. However, I don't think that you can hear me to help him. Here's what we're going to do. So I think I'm going to round off this podcast, unfortunately, without my esteemed co-host, Jordan Lindell. I know this has been sort of a scattered test episode. Nobody will probably even listen to this, which is fine because we had a bit of technical difficulties, but we're going to try to get something out like this every single week. And I think that we're going to just be sort of like we had mentioned, we're going to be talking about things that are going on in our own lives. We're going to be talking about things that we have experience in, and hopefully provide you guys with some takeaways. But until next week, I think we're going to call this episode quits. Episode 1, a resounding success, a resounding failure. Either one works for me. And we look forward to hearing from you guys next week and building this out as we both grow sort of in this weird quarantine time. So thank you so much, guys, for listening. I'm sorry that Jordan can't jump in and say goodbye, but I'm sure he wishes you all well. So take care, guys, and we'll catch you next week.